friendship. Well, let's get talking now. The Lagos Chamber of Commerce and Industry is asking for the federal government to adopt prudent fiscal measures complementary to address Nigeria's macroeconomic challenges, stating that the outlook for emerging and developing economies remains risky amidst elevated debt and financing costs. LCCI made this recommendation at its State of Economy briefing for the first quarter of 2024. According to the LCCI, global growth has been projected to slow to 2.4% in 2024 from an estimated 2.6% growth in 2023. Now, what are the prospects for Nigeria in 2024 against this development? Well, to discuss this, I'm being joined by the Director General of the Lagos Chamber of Commerce and Industry, Dr. Chinyere Amuna. Dr. Amuna, thank you so much. Happy New Year to you, and it's good to see you on the program.
Happy New Year to you too, and good afternoon to your viewers. Thanks for having me.
Yes, that press conference, a lot was in that document, I must say. All aspects of the economy was touched. But considering the global issues that have been identified and, of course, local issues that we face, let's do a summary of what really is the expectation from the LCCI. How do you think it will turn out as we move on in 2024? What will play out? What are those things we should really stand out to take note of?
When we look at 2024, we are cautiously optimistic. Before the press conference, we had done an economic outlook to just take a view of the budget spending patterns from the past, and then to postulate what will happen, what could happen. Now, looking at the budget and where we think we are going, we believe that there are certain things that government has done so far to signal some positive policies will be put in place. With the removal of fuel subsidy and the harmonization of, or the attempted harmonization of FX rates between the I&E window and the parallel market, these have affected Nigerians significantly. The removal of fuel subsidy has affected transportation of goods and services, even logistics with companies moving their products is difficult. When you think about the Forex, then you have a challenge with raw materials or input to production being extremely expensive. That means the outcome, the eventual goods produced will of course be expensive. And with the rising inflation figure, it then means that things are like at a loggerhead. However, from what the economists say, that the rise in inflation figure has reduced over time. So we hope that in the year 2024, we'll begin to see a decline, a gradual decline of that position. But for us, really, there are several things that are affecting our members and the organized private sector, such as policies around power, policies around insecurity, policies around exports, and the fact that we need to raise revenue. If you look at the World Bank projection for Nigeria, I think the growth rate is about 3.3 for 2024, I think 3.7 for 2025. Now, if you compare this to where the budget we want to get to, the government is saying we want to make 1 trillion within the next eight years. That means that the economy must grow about 7 to 8% in the next 5 to 6 years. That tells you that the growth rate being projected won't get us there. However, if government is able to do all the right things, then hopefully we'll get there. So we need to look at innovation. We need to look at other sources of revenue apart from oil, and see how we can be able to fund the budget that we have. So there is a lot to be done, but we seem to be heading in the right direction.
Good that we're heading in the right direction. Chinese and United States economy also seems to be picking up, and the economies are expanding at this time. So what impact do you think these global issues, don't forget we still have the war in Ukraine and also what's happening on the other side, the Middle East, and also movement of goods here and there. How do you see this affecting the business environment in Nigeria?
Well, Nigeria is not an island. It's integrated into the economic ecosystem. That means that whatever is happening in the large economies will affect us. A lot of our imports come from China. So what is happening in China will definitely affect us one way or the other. And if you look at all the challenges across the globe, one thing is clear: inflation in other climes are also rising. We just finished the Davos meetings last week, and it's the same thing. People are optimistic, but we are also realistic enough to say there are challenges that we need to deal with if we are going to turn around the corner and and things are going to look better. So if we bring that all back into Nigeria, we have our issues here. We have our issues that we need to deal with. A lot of times policies are made, but there's always a difference between what's been implemented. So we need to tighten that policy making and policy implementation and tighten it properly. We need to deal with power. Without power, we can't increase production. For us to be able to have an effective reduction in inflation, we need to increase production, and power is critical. There have been policies around the generation and the distribution, but the transmission, we have always called that the transmission sector should be, the private sector needs to step in and support government to make that work well, because then everything will come together. On the security aspects, if you look at the inflation figure, the key aspect of that is driving inflation is food inflation. Food inflation is high because farmers can't go to farm. So if you don't deal with security issues, then we can only keep talking. Things won't get better any faster because we haven't dealt with the insecurity issue. So these are some of the things that locally we need to look inwards and begin to deal with the things that we have. Also, there have been several efforts to attract foreign direct investments. If we don't deal with the issues I just mentioned, it will be difficult for us to be as attractive as we need to be.
Let's take it from there and also say LCCI is saying government must adopt some fiscal policy measures, create investment policy or friendly tax policies. But the president has also instructed that number of entourage for trips must be reduced by about 60%. So when you talk about this, what about the states, local governments? Yesterday, FAC was shared about 1.2 trillion naira. It never used to be like that. What sort of fiscal responsibility are you expecting from state governments to support this course at the end of the day?
Well, you're right. I mean, when the reduction in the entourage for trips happened, we did issue a statement. But we first commended the efforts. It may seem like a drop in the ocean, but it is an effort in the right direction. However, it will be more effective if at the state level, even at the local government level, at the Senate, House of Assembly, they all adopt the same principle in terms of entourage for travels. That will reduce costs significantly. So yes, the funds have been given out to the states, but they need to put the funds in productive sectors that will help generate revenue for the states. Because IGR in most states have been low in the past years. We need to increase that. States need to pay attention to that. And so putting funds in areas where you can quickly facilitate increased production will be very important for state government. So they need to pay attention to that.
What sectors are we to look out for this year? Sectors that you think will drive growth for Nigeria's economy?
Agriculture is a big one because we just talked about food inflation. So we certainly need to pay attention to agriculture. We must feed ourselves, and then that is also an area where we can easily export to earn to have non-oil revenue coming in. If we can fix the agricultural sector and be able to export, that would be great. ICT is a big one because for some of the things that we're doing, we need to introduce a lot of innovation. If you look at in the past couple of years, our startups in the fintech sector, they have done very well to attract funding, but we then need to support them to be able to grow and impact other sectors, because ICT, if technology can power all the other sectors, then production will be more efficient, running of business operations will be more efficient, and that would be less cost. So ICT, agriculture, and power. Power is also a big one. And of course, the security infrastructure needs to be dealt with.
Then let's now stay with the recommendations that we are talking about that was opted by the LCCI. Now, the issue around our debt remains very, very worrisome. And many would tell you that what can we do at the moment to address this ugly trend? Now, what is your take with regards to our debt and that argument that has always been the debt to GDP or the debt to revenue ratio that economists always analyze and say that, well, Nigeria is not breaking this, but we might be breaking that. But in totality, we're talking about 80-something trillion naira. That is a lot. Where do you think, or what impact do you think this will have on growth prospects for 2024?
With our debts, the challenge has always been the debt servicing. That would possibly mean that where we're getting the funds from, where we're borrowing from, may not be as efficient as it should be. So it's important to, okay, so we possibly need to borrow, but then where are we borrowing from, and being sure that we have the right terms, interest rates, tenure, and all that needs to be clearly fixed. And that way the debt servicing cost will be less. Secondly, if you borrow, even if you think of a normal person, if you borrow and you borrow for consumption, then it's not translating to value today or in the future. If you borrow and you put it into infrastructure and production capacity, then you're going to be able to generate sufficient to be able to service the loan. So it's one, the terms of our borrowing and the usage of the funds that we borrow. We need to deal with those aspects very critically.
Well, we are still going to stay moving on with economic issues in Nigeria. We can't but talk about inflation, which the figure now is so high. Like a colleague would say, higher than the cocoa house in Ibadan. But what do you think should be done to rein in inflation? Because increasing rates has been on for some time, but the kind of inflation we have in Nigeria seems to be deferring all odds, and it's not really working to rein in inflation. So what can be put in place? What should be instituted that you think can help, at least could start to bring down inflation in 2024? Or you still think that will continue to be on the rise? When are we going to start to see a relief?
So with the inflation, one of the things that we've said over and over at LCCI is the fact that there isn't a proper handshake between the monetary and the fiscal policies. You can increase interest rates, and perhaps if other fundamentals are right, that will help drive down inflation. But here we are, the fundamentals are not right. We just talked a bit now about the food inflation. So if we haven't dealt with all the other dynamics to be able to deal with that aspect, that means even if you're increasing the interest rates, it won't have any impact because we haven't dealt with other things. If we haven't ensured that business environment is conducive for businesses to thrive, then it will be a challenge to reduce inflation. Last year, we saw some of the big companies leaving Nigeria, and they're going to our neighboring country. And the concern has always been the cost of doing business in Nigeria is high. Policies and regulations are not conducive for businesses to do well. If we are not helping our productive sectors, we're not helping the manufacturing sector, then it's going to be very difficult. But the government is making the right promises, and we're hoping that some of these things will begin to shift in the next couple of months, and we'll see how it goes. I mean, with the Fiscal Policy and Tax Reforms Committee making some efforts to try and streamline taxes, that will also relieve the headache of businesses. So some of these things need to be fixed, apart from just increasing the interest rates.
Seriously, a lot is around the Nigerian economy. Now, for businesses, that's finally now, for businesses who are under the LCCI and, of course, under other chambers and business community, what do you think, or what should be the outlook for 2024, considering these real challenges that are on the ground? What do you see of a business? We see what's happening with some companies exiting the country. That's not good news at a time where the country needs investment. So what do you think will be running through the minds of businesses considering these challenges at this time?
Well, any business person has the right to be concerned because the things happening around are concerning. However, like I said at the beginning, we are cautiously optimistic. So we need to remain positive and support government to achieve some of its goals. Because if they're able to achieve these goals that they have set, then it will have a positive impact on the rest of us. Businesses are worried. However, they need to think of how do we operate more efficiently? How do we reduce our cost of operations? Because if the cost of operation isn't reduced, then your pricing at the end of the day is too high. People can buy your stock, and then there's a lot of stockpiling. It's a cycle. So we need to see how do we act or operate more efficiently so that our pricing will be better. Businesses need to begin to think, how do we deploy technology? When we're thinking efficient, how do we deploy technology better in the things that we do? How do we seek alternative sources of raw materials? So a lot of the production input today is being imported. So with the forex problem, that's the challenge. So let's think find alternative ways, alternative sources of raw materials for our production facility. That will help.
Interesting stuff. I must thank you so much, Dr. Chinyere Amona, Director General, Lagos Chamber of Commerce and Industry. Thank you for joining the program and making sense of the document put together by the Lagos Chamber of Commerce and Industry on Nigeria's economic outlook for 2024. We appreciate you.
Thank you very much, and have a good day.
Coming up on the show, let's understand bilateral relations. U.S. Secretary